All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. Have a kind of weird slate today with DraftKings deciding to split it up into two different slates. We got the DraftKings main slate, the DraftKings night slate, and then the FanDuel main slate. So I know you are more of a FanDuel player. Is that just kind of the approach you're going with today? Is just probably stick to FanDuel, see how DraftKings goes, or kind of what's going to be your approach today?
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty good night on FanDuel last night. I got nice, plenty of bankroll over there, so I'm going to stick to FanDuel. But yeah, I mean, the one difference, if you're just comparing the two main slates, we have no Lakers T-Wolves on the DraftKings main slate. That game is on the FanDuel main slate. And then that Wizards Blazers game isn't on either main slate. So, yeah, the one real difference is we're waiting on that Anthony Davis news. Would love to get Anthony Davis in with LeBron already ruled out, but yeah, it might be tough to do because obviously no one else is that expensive. So if we don't get that news by 8 o'clock, we're kind of screwed. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, and not to mention, I mean, we have tons of value across the slate. The Cavs are banged up. The Jazz have their G League team going to get today. The Pistons on their record-breaking losing streak are favored tonight. So definitely a weird one, man, but kind of fun, honestly. I'm kind of looking forward to build.
Should we just make? I know we kind of talked about this before the stream, but should we just do like a game by game breakdown instead? I mean, there's not too many games.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I'm comfortable. Yeah, that works. Or the other thing would, I mean, if we're doing positions, I think we would just talk about the Lakers T-Wolves on FanDuel only. But like, there's really not much there unless we get the ADs.
Let's start with that actually. Lakers Timberwolves. Then again, you said we're kind of waiting on Anthony Davis news. That's probably obviously the biggest piece of news that we are waiting on. If 80 sits, are you just loading up on him, obviously on FanDuel?
Well, if 80's in, yeah, I want to get as much of him as possible. If he's out, I mean, there's a very good chance this game blows out. The Timberwolves have been one of the best defensive teams in the league. Other than Austin Reeves, it's been tough to trust any piece of this team, but we have seen with LeBron out, Rui has had some good games. He's probably the second guy I'd be looking to get to. If Christian Wood were to suddenly slide into the starting lineup, I'd have interest in him. I will say, though, Jackson Hayes has been getting more of these starts than Wood. He's just been terrible. So I'd probably avoid Jackson Hayes here. I don't think we need that much value. Would get to guys like Reeves, Rui, Prince, Reddish, D'Lo. But again, definitely some blowout risk. Maybe a little revenge narrative here for D'Angelo Russell, who was given up on due to his lack of chemistry with one Rudy Gobert. But yeah, man, I'm really hoping 80's in because he's going to be one of the best payups on the slate. But yeah, if he's out, I almost just play some lineups with like 2K left on the table and just pivot down to Towns, which does not feel good. So I'm trying to look for like these 2-for-2 swaps. I was telling you before. It's tricky. Like the best builds right now on FanDuel probably don't even have this game just because there are so many great plays. We also have Zion out for the Pels. Like we'll get to all this news, but yeah, man, it's tricky. And it's an hour later. So if we don't get the AD news, things get dicey. Like definitely just have a plan in place if you are playing on FanDuel. Otherwise, I think, I mean, with him out, the game's all right, but it's not like we don't have other great value in some of these other spots.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for FanDuel, Reeves to me just kind of seems like a standout play, kind of regardless. I know he's kind of priced up, but feels kind of safe. I was surprised that the only 7% there for FanDuel. Russell obviously becomes a lot more appealing if AD's out, but maybe there's a little bit more blowout risk. But to your point about having to go down from Anthony Davis to Towns, if AD's out, it's not like that does help out Towns though too for not having Anthony Davis there at the same time. Like easier defensively, so like he should be able to kind of feast on offense. So I don't know. It's not like terrible.
Yeah, it's just a 2,700 price difference. So like I'm trying to see, like obviously if I could get some Ant Edwards in there, like I wouldn't mind upgrading like a shooting guard like Cam Reddish or something like that. So I'm just trying to find like the perfect 2-for-2, so it's very easy to pivot, and I don't know that it exists.
To me, it looks like it'd be like Reeves. You start up with Mike Conley and AD, and then probably go to like Reeves and Towns instead, or something like that.
But here's the issue. So if you use a point guard spot for Conley, if Merrill's in, Merrill's questionable for Cleveland, but Porter Jr. is like the best play on the slate.
Yeah,
so you want to have him at point guard, and then Jaw's underpriced against the Pacers, who I absolutely love here. So I definitely want to get to some of him. So yeah, that makes it tricky. It is good that Sexton has shooting guard eligibility, a few of these other guys. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely using a spot for Porter in most lineups. And if Merrill's in, I'd be using both point guard spots on Cavs.
Yeah.
But but I want to get to a lot of jaws. So, like, you're right. That is probably the best way to do it. But if things don't break your way, you're really kind of handicapping yourself, avoiding some of the best value plays that are available.
Yeah, so let's kind of pivot off of this game. I do just want to mention, let's talk about Portland and Washington just real quick, because this is like the only time this season where I would have been like absolutely hyped to play Portland and Washington players, because it's such a close game and high scoring game. I'm like, I'm so pissed off that it's not.
Yeah, this is annoying. Man. I don't know what they're doing. I've heard some say it's to draw more casual players in, so there's less late swapping late at night. I know there's an NFL game tonight. I know the holidays are coming, but I really can't figure it out. And it stinks for us too as content creators. It just makes it more difficult.
And I'm just looking at the price, and like I probably, maybe it's a good thing, because like Gafford's kind of cheap relative to the game. Tyus Jones seems kind of cheap again relative to the game. So, maybe they're saving my bankroll a little bit by not including it.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys like Kuzma, Grant, Simons, who I always love to play in matchups like this, but they have low floors, so I don't know. It's not the worst thing that the last game's cut off. I just wish they kept it the same between the two sites, so we didn't have to have this whole separate conversation about Anthony Davis. On DK, it's honestly nice tonight. You don't have to worry about that. So you can just build with these 7 and 8 o'clock games.
So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and pivot, get back into the news section, but kind of talk about some of the injury situations that we already know about. So let's start out kind of with that Pels Cleveland game. I want to start out with Cleveland in general. So we already know Garland's out. We already know Mitchell's out. We already know Mobley's out. It's going to be the exact same situation as last night, except we don't know the news on Merle just yet. We haven't projected for minutes, but only 24. And I will say he does almost feel a little bit trap play tonight, but he's not priced up enough to the point where I think we have to worry about it. And then Craig Porter Jr., kind of the same thing, but again, I feel pretty comfortable still playing both of them. It's just at the same time, I think we got their ceilings almost last game. What are your kind of thoughts on those two?
I mean, the thing is, the price is still wrong on both of these guys for the matchups, especially Porter. I mean, he's sub 5K. Even if he doesn't get you 40, 50 fantasy points, he's hitting value at 30. And it's going to be hard for him not to hit that with the short rotation. Definitely a tougher matchup than against the Jazz, but I do still think there's upside here. They're at home against the Pels, who don't play that slow, but definitely a better defensive team, but not a spot I'm afraid of. But yeah, man, I mean, I do want to say Merrill's a little bit trappy, but I mean, the volume's been there for him. He's hitting his threes, and at the price, again, it's more price than anything. Like, he doesn't have to have an amazing night to hit value. They didn't raise the prices at all. They're exactly the same as yesterday.
My thing with Merle is that he is coming in off of 2 pretty good 3-ball nights, and he had 14 3-ball attempts. I'm like, all right, it takes him having a cold night, and then he's just not giving you. It's like RJ Barrett, I guess, and we would be playing RJ Barrett at this price tag.
That's the thing, exactly. Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's like, you just, if he has a cold night, I guess it is what it is. Like, you knew that was the risk, but
yeah, Strus had the cold night last night. He did get it going a little bit in the second half. I had a good night because I was lower on Strus because I was getting to Merrill and some Niang, which wasn't a great play. But tonight, I do think if Merrill's out, we're going to get to more Okoro maybe.
Yeah.
And then I know we got a few guys in Discord. I don't know that his name has come up yet today, but a buddy of mine and I were talking. And if Amani Bates is with the team and he somehow slides into this rotation at minimum price, I don't even think he's in the model yet. But if he, at minimum price, does get involved, I do think he has a lot of upside. Really talented young player, just hasn't been getting minutes. But yeah, I mean, the same suspects as yesterday. Niang's going to look really good. LeVert, regardless of whether or not he starts, is probably your second best Cav after Porter here. Then Allen. I mean, there's other good centers on the slate, but it's 7,100, 7,500 on DK, but still no Evan Mobley. And in a decent spot here against Joe Val, who's kind of hit or miss on defense. I like the spot for Allen again. So, I don't know. I'm definitely going to be close to 100% on Porter, regardless of the Merrill news. If Merrill's in, I'll be heavy on him. If he's out, though, I'm definitely going to have plenty of LeVert and some of these other guys as well. But it's just how weird do you want to get with it? But, yeah, I think Porter's unavoidable as things stand. LeVert pretty close behind him.
Yeah, I want to gather your thoughts on Tristan Thompson as well, because he is someone that point per minute wise is really good. 18 minutes the last 2 games, 11 in the first game against Houston. That was terrible. But then last night against Utah, 30 points. To me, at 3.8, I do think it's kind of worth looking at, but we only have projected to get 16 minutes. And so Like he's only 7% owned on DraftKings, 1% owned on FanDuel. I would have thought that he'd be more than that, just given the recency bias. But that could just be a situation where there is value. We don't really need to go there.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And I mean, we'll talk about Utah in a minute, but they're
Mhm.
super thin tonight. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind Thompson as like a one-off. Probably wouldn't play him in any sort of low risk or cash type contest, but it's kind of like Andre Drummond. Like you're not going to get that many minutes, but when he's on the floor, he's going to be producing. So you don't even need 20 minutes necessarily for him to hit value at that price. But yeah, I mean, it's Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't feel too good about it. But yeah, I mean, who's to say Allen doesn't get in foul trouble or something like that? He could break the slate.
Mhm.
Very, very, very low ownership. It's just not the highest likelihood outcome.
You mentioned Bates, and I'm just waiting for when like Isaiah Mobley and Bates like actually do get some significant playing time on the slate because that'll be a lot of fun because they are point per minute players. We're just kind of waiting on it. Looking at the Pelicans,
Yeah.
not too much. I guess there is a lot of ownership, but it's kind of spread out. So we got Marshall pulling in some ownership, J-Val pulling in some ownership, Ingram, CJ McCollum, but it's not too chalky. And obviously that's going to be because Zion Williams is out. Are you I guess who do you prefer most here? Because I'm looking at it, I'm seeing Ingram, CJ McCollum. Those feel like very safe plays tonight. I want to get to them because they're not as high owned as I thought. But I want your thoughts here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, man. I think those are the two, and they're obvious. McCollum and Ingram both kind of priced where they should be, even with Zion out. Not the best
Mhm.
matchup against Cleveland, but a better matchup than usual with a lot of their regular rotational
Yes,
pieces
yes.
out.
That's huge. Honestly, I think because
Yeah,
people are going to see the opponent rank and just assume that's a tough matchup, but it doesn't.
exactly.
It's not. You know.
I know. Allen's still going to anchor that defense, but at the same
Yeah.
time, I mean, they're definitely not as strong in the back row with guys like Merrill and Porter, et cetera, on the floor. I prefer Ingram of the two just because of the position. Again, there's a ton of good guards tonight in the Utah game. We love Ja. We have Porter from
Mhm.
Cleveland. Forward's a little bit tougher to fill. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like Ingram for that reason. 9% on FanDuel seems insane, but I wouldn't be shocked to see that rise a bit. So those are the two obvious ones. Herb Jones was super chalky yesterday, put up a major dud. I played none of them. That really helped my night. I could get to some of him tonight. Like this is that classic situation where a guy is chalk burns of the field. Everyone gets off him, and then suddenly he has a good game the next game.
Yeah.
He's affordable. Don't mind getting to him. But yeah, I mean, I feel good about the starters. But then, like when you get to guys like Murphy or Marshall, I don't know. They're kind of boomer bust. So I don't mind them as value. I just think we have safer value tonight. But I don't mind mixing in some of these secondary pieces for the Pels
Mhm.
just to wrap up the Pels. I mean, Joval's fine as well. It's just there's good centers tonight, pretty good value. So it really is mostly going to be McCollum and Ingram for me. But I totally agree with you, man. They're definitely underowned.
So I do want to get into just the chat real quick as well, just seeing kind of what we have coming in. Again, if you guys have any questions, get those in. So we had a couple of people just talking up Porter as a play, and yeah, we both agree with that. Then we got Jose kind of wondering about the top 5 plays tonight. I mean, that's kind of a
Like in
loaded
terms of
question.
raw points, yeah. I mean, it depends
Tonight.
what you're talking. Like if it's
Hmm.
point per dollar, or if we're talking just like the top plays.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, Giannis is going to be up there. I
Yeah.
love John Moran tonight. I think the matchup with Indy is amazing. He looked
Let's
great his
let's just get
first
into
game.
Memphis
Yeah,
for
let's
you.
do that. Good way to
So
go.
Uh, so yeah, let's just start with Ja there. Obviously, they're still a little bit banged up. He got 35 minutes in that game. We only have him projected to get 32. I think he's going to get more than that. So let's hear your thoughts on Ja.
Yeah, I mean, he's fully conditioned. It's not like he was hurt. It's not like he was out because he was injured. And this matchup is the Coors Field of the NBA. You're playing the Pacers. They play
Yes.
ridiculously fast. I mean, Halliburton's a good defender, but he's not really playing one-on-one defense. The wings on this team are kind of hit or miss as far as defense goes. And yeah, I mean, they just play to run up and down the court, which definitely favors a guy like Ja.
Mhm.
I mean, Vince Williams at his price is okay, but really it's Morant that I have interest in here. There's really not much else other than those two. And as some of this other value opens up, I'm getting further from Williams. So I just love Ja here. I think he's underpriced on both sides. When you compare him to the other top guards, he is cheaper than the likes of an SGA, of a Halliburton. And I think he's priced similarly to Dame, but in a
Mhm.
much, much, much better matchup. And he's not sharing usage with Giannis. So, yeah, I mean, I imagine he's going to be popular as a pay up, but I just love it. And yeah, 21% on both sites.
Yeah.
I think if Merrill is in, that could lower on FanDuel because Merrill and Porter are going to be two of the best plays point per dollar on the entire slate. But Yeah, I want to get to Ja regardless tonight.
Yeah.
I think he's excellent here.
I think that makes sense. I do want to point out on the DraftKings pick section, I don't know if anyone plays it or has it legal in their state. His points total is at 28.5. The average sportsbook line has that 31 right now. So that's a pretty massive edge. So like they keep their lines same throughout the day. Like once it's released, it's the same. Nice. So yeah, his started out at 28.5. So to that point, they have him projected now to get 31 points. And so yeah, he should crush in this matchup, just to kind of summarize that. But I want to call that out. That was something that stood out to me earlier. Is there anyone else in that game that you like? Because Bane, I feel like Jackson and Bane are going to be hit or miss now. It's like one of those two is probably going to go off. Are you favoring one of the two? We also have Vince Williams pulling in as kind of chalk. Kind of who are you looking at as the secondary option considering price?
Yeah, I mentioned Vince Williams. I think it has to be him just because of the price. And it's not like I love him as a play, but he has been getting the minutes. He is cheap. And again, it's a great matchup. I mean, if you're landing on Jackson or Bane, I wouldn't feel bad about it, but I'm pretty confident there's other plays in those ranges at those same positions that we're going to want to get to ahead of them. So yeah, it's really Ja for me here. Don't mind Vince, but if you're landing on the other starters, it's fine. Like even Biyombo, I think he's cheap enough to consider. Really didn't do anything last night. Only played 21 minutes. He's definitely like a high risk, large field type play only. But yeah, for me, it's mostly just Ja here and maybe a little bit of Vince Williams.
Okay, makes sense. Let's go ahead and pivot on to Utah. Also, a lot of kind of injury news here. So they're going to be without Jordan Clarkson, Keontae George, Horton Tucker, Markkanen, and then Yutsev. Is that how you say it? I don't know how to say his name. I keep butchering it.
You're good. He doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, he was getting minutes for a little bit.
Oh, that kid. Yeah.
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 But yeah, he's out anyway. So we got Walker Kessler, who has been getting around 30 minutes, kind of low owned on FanDuel, but that's because he's priced up. On DraftKings, he's only 19%. And I bring that up because when you see the pricing difference there, that's $1,200. And he's projected to get 30 minutes, been a strong point per minute type player going against Detroit, who's kind of banged up with their bigs. I don't know. He was someone I think I'm going to get to more now that he's only 19% owned. That was kind of my starting point for Utah. Obviously, we got Colin Sexton there. We got Chris Dunn there. Basically, all these plays I think are good plays. And to me, this night is kind of coming out to be how many pieces of the Cleveland value do we want? How many pieces of the Utah slight pay-ups-ish do we want to be on? Because the Utah players are a little bit priced up, but also probably a little bit safer. I'm guessing. What are your thoughts on that Cleveland versus Utah value? And then also give me your top Utah plays.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the Cleveland value just because, I don't know, I think it's even thinner. Or, I mean, I could prefer Craig Porter over any
Utah that value. Makes sense.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, a lot of these Utah guys are priced up just a bit. It's tough to call Sexton like a value play, but he is my favorite Utah Jazz player.
Yeah.
7,200 on FanDuel, 7,700 on DK. It's really nice that you have shooting guard eligibility on him, so you can play some of these other guards that we're talking about. I'm with you. I like Kessler as a tournament play on DK. I think he's fine. I think Olynyk on FanDuel makes a lot of sense where you can play him at power forward, only 5,600. Collins gives me some pause. It's like we haven't really seen a ceiling game out of him regardless of who's in the lineup. So maybe I don't get to him, but it looks like the field's really not on him either. So in tournaments, he makes some sense. Chris Dunn's interesting. I mean, 24% on DK, 52% on FanDuel. He should be heavily involved here. But I think if there's any piece of this Utah Jazz team that's over-owned, it's probably him. But again, if Merrill's out, I think he's kind of necessary in some builds. You also have dual position eligibility on both sides. Really don't like the 5,800 tag on him. But again, this is such a thin rotation. My second favorite Jazz player is actually going to be Fontecchio.
FanDuel, right?
Yeah, definitely FanDuel. I mean, I don't mind him in tournaments on DK. We did see with all these guys out that he does have some upside. But yeah, the price is $1,200 cheaper on FanDuel, so much easier to get to him over there. It's really Sexton on both sides, Olynyk on FanDuel, Fontecchio both sides, but more so on FanDuel. And then I'm with you. I think Kessler looks good as a tournament play, but certainly a little bit riskier. But again, great matchup here against Detroit.
Yeah, and that's definitely it. We have some weird pricing discrepancies between DraftKings and FanDuel for both. I don't think I've seen it this crazy. Like Collins, $600 difference cheaper on FanDuel. Kelly Olynyk cheaper on FanDuel. Then you got Kessler, who's cheaper on DraftKings. Chris Dunn, $1,000 cheaper on FanDuel. I don't think I've seen that on a slate where there's that big of pricing differences. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with how they broke up these slates tonight.
It could be.
Yeah, but man, it is a little strange.
So we'll just go ahead and pivot on into the position by position plays. First, let's see here. Top value plays guard, forward, and center. We can kind of answer that. I think we kind of like Porter for sure. And then,
I mean, LeVert, even though he's not that cheap.
Yeah, he's kind of a forward.
Yeah, he's going to look really good. He's saying value plays. Yeah, definitely Porter. Porter's number one. No doubt about that. Let's see here. Forward is interesting. I mean, there's not much. Well, you could play on FanDuel. I think it's Fontecchio.
I agree,
but I don't know that like it's LeVert or Strus on DK. I guess it's not like there's a ton of cheap forwards.
Well, you have the Utah Okachai
Ja.
Yeah,
yeah. What's his name?
Gosh, those names, man.
Yeah, he's been inconsistent though, kind of similar to Collins. Like even with a ton of guys out, like he's not having huge games. So I don't mind him, but if he's popular, he's only 10%.
No, he's not. I think that's why I like him. Like a good pivot.
Yeah, you're right. He does make sense in tournaments. The model certainly loves him, so usually that's a good way to go. But yeah, here's the thing. I don't think the best value is actually at forward tonight, unless you're going to count someone like LeVert. I think you want to pay down a guard, probably center maybe, and I don't know. It's just tougher to find value at forward right now.
There's a lot of decent mid-tier plays, and we'll get into that kind of in a second here. We'll start out with the guards. So looking at the top guard plays, again, sorting by DraftKings guards as typical. The top values, kind of not shocking in a sense, like Porter, Simons, Sexton. We could probably take off Portland.
So I was just gonna say that.
Let's do that. Then it's a little bit thinner, but still makes sense. Chris Middleton kind of popping up as a good value, not coming in high owned. I personally like to get to Ingram. I feel like that's safe, and I like getting to CJ McCollum. I also feel like that's safe as well. Man, this is such a fascinating slate because you got Craig Porter cheap, you got Sexton safe, Ingram, McCollum safe, Ja a clear pay up, and I think Dame to an extent a decent pay up, and then Chris Dunn, Strus, Merle. It's really fascinating as to like which guard plays you want to go out of your way to target because there's like 7, and it really just depends on your build.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you. There's a lot of good guards tonight. I definitely Porter. He's my favorite. Sexton's right behind him, and like I said, I'm going to make a priority to get up to as much John Morant as possible here. He is drawing decent ownership. Dame is the logical pivot off of him, so I don't mind Dame as kind of a tournament play in lineups that you're not necessarily getting to Morant. But McCollum's really low owned too, and I almost feel like he's a pivot off Morant, depending on how you're building, because they're both point guard only over on DK. You could play McCollum as a shooting guard on FanDuel. But yeah, love Morant, love Porter, love Sexton. Those are definitely my top 3.
And then, like, for what it's worth, like, LeVert could easily go off and have a massive night. Like, that wouldn't be shocking at all. So he's kind of low owned as well. I do want to mention, like, Lillard. If we get news that Giannis was to sit, I don't think he's going to. He's kind of expected to play at this point. But, like, that would just put another wrinkle into the slate if Giannis were to sit, because then we'd be loading up on Lillard.
Yeah, man. I think we have enough wrinkles. I'm hoping we don't get that one too. But, yeah, I would definitely agree. Yeah, I mean, anytime Giannis is out, Dame's going to be one of the best plays on the slate moving forward. I didn't mention LeVert just because I think I consider him to be a forward.
Yeah, that's where you want to play him tonight. No, you want
to and I did see Courtney brought up Sam Merrill, and I only didn't mention him because he's added to the injury report as questionable. If Merrill's in, he's awesome. Great value play here for sure. I'm just leaning towards him not playing. So that's a situation we need to keep an eye on. Luckily, that is one of the early games, so we should have that news hopefully by lock. It does start 30 minutes after lock, but you think they'd make that call pretty soon.
Would that just make LeVert's minutes more locked in, and maybe Craig Porter gets a slight bump in minutes as well? That's kind of my biggest, like, where do the minutes go if Sam Merrill's out? And I really couldn't figure it out. My logic says Porter, LeVert, but maybe it's some random bench guy. I don't really know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Merrill's a shooting guard pretty much. But yeah, like LeVert can run a little bit of point.
Yeah.
So I almost think that you could see some of the bigger guys, like maybe Amani Bates, get minutes.
Yeah.
But last night Dean Wade played under 30 minutes. I think he's a guy who definitely see a bump here.
Mhm.
Okoro only played 24, which is surprising to me. I think he's a guy who'd probably be the first in line for an increase in minutes. So yeah, as it stands, I love Porter, I love LeVert, I love Merrill, then Strus. But if Merrill's out, then I think we're going to want to get to more of LeVert, Strus, and probably Okoro
Yeah.
before anyone else. But yeah, man.
Okoro, Okoro had a rough night shooting, 2 for 7, and then went 0 for 2 from free throws. So that's probably why I didn't get the minutes there. It's just bad night. Sam Merrill was shooting basketball well. Kind of goes hand in hand.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and just switch up and get into the forwards here. Hopefully an easy slate that we have other than forwards, but we'll get into it. So it is nice on DraftKings. You could play Chris Dunn there, maybe appealing there, but he's priced up. I feel like he's a difficult click on DraftKings, even with the forward guard eligibility. On FanDuel, pretty simple. Kind of already mentioned that, though. You mentioned you like Vince Williams a decent amount, but is he someone
Yeah.
you're prioritizing or not?
No, like I said, I think I'm going to be more in the mid range here. I really do like Brandon Ingram. I love Levert. Levert's probably my number one. But then if you could find ways to pay up, I mean, Wemby seems under owned on DK at 9K flat,
Yeah.
coming off a game where he rested. Um, I already mentioned Ingram. I mean, DeRozan's fine here. Let's see, who else do we have? And then, I mean, all the way up, we have guys like Giannis. On FanDuel, we have Anthony Davis. That's a whole nother conversation, whether he's going to be in or not. But yeah, I think right now, Levert's my number one. Going to get to a ton of him. Really, really like Ingram. But another situation we haven't touched on yet is the Clippers situation.
Yeah.
If Paul George ends up sitting, we don't have that news yet, then obviously we're going to want to get to some Kawhi and Harden. Harden didn't have a great game last night with George out, but Kawhi did.
Yeah.
But I definitely want shares of both of them with George out whenever they are. And then Norman Powell off the bench or starting would be very appealing here again
Yeah.
if we do get Paul George out. So another situation, another wrinkle that we got to wait and see on. But yeah, and then one more I did want to bring up. So this is the first game I think all season maybe the Pistons have been favored.
Yeah.
Bojan Bogdanovic hasn't been himself lately, but this is the type of matchup I think we could see him excel in. This is a former team. If you want to play into the revenge narrative, I'd be pissed if I was on the Pistons. But yeah, we did just get word that Killian Hayes is out, so maybe that
Mhm.
secures minutes and usage for him. That should move Jaden Ivey, who is a guard, into the starting lineup. He's going to be appealing here as well. But usually I'm not really rushing to play Pistons, but tonight in a high total game against the Jazz where they're actually favored, yeah, I think it makes some sense. So
I'm wondering if that Hayes news shifts some minutes to Thompson or even potentially Alec Burks. I don't think we'd want to play Burks, but like Thompson, if he gets six or so more minutes, I think he'd become appealing as well.
yeah, I like the player Thompson. I mean, he hasn't really been great. I don't know if that's just a product of the team around him.
Yeah.
I do really like Ivy starting. Last night it was weird. Somehow Sasser was more popular than Ivy was. I thought that was like the most obvious leverage play of the year. The rest of my lineups didn't do good that night though, so having Jaden Ivey wasn't enough. But I do like him a lot here as well. He's a guy who's pretty aggressive on offense. Should be in the closing lineup. Not a guy who usually plays over 30 minutes, but maybe here with Hayes out, we do get to that mark, which for him around 5K is going to be very appealing. So I
Yeah.
know we're on forwards. I do really like Bojan, but I do think it's important to kind of touch on that news. But Bogdanovich does look good here, sub 7K on both sides.
Yeah, and he does have a pretty decent ceiling, I think, in this matchup. Like he could go for 40, and I don't think it'd be shocking at all. And obviously, we'd love to get that production out of him.
Yeah.
From there, it does feel just not sexy. Like either I want to punt or pay up. To your point, a little bit there. Maybe a little bit of Chris Middleton, slightly, and then that's maybe it for me. That's
Yeah,
so
I mean, two guys that burnt everyone last night is Chalk, Strus, and Herb Jones. I think you go there just because they're a little bit lower owned than they should be because people are pissed off.
yeah.
So I don't mind those guys as pivots. On FanDuel, again, if AD is in your lineup and he gets ruled out, you're probably going to end up on Carl Anthony Towns as a power forward, which isn't a bad play, but I don't know. I'd rather 2 for 2 and upgrade something else if that situation occurs. But yeah, man, like I said, it's really Levert. I like Strus here. I'm fine going back to him. And we did just get word that Merrill expects to play, in his own words. So
Good.
that is a good thing. That should drive down the ownership of all the other guards, at least on FanDuel, probably on DK as well. I imagine he's going to be super popular again. Again, he doesn't need to have this amazing shooting night to hit value. He's just so damn cheap.
Yeah. So let's we'll touch on that kind of in the first build, kind of what we're doing with the guards, see if we end up on them. Let's go on ahead and jump on into centers tonight. So looking at the centers right now, like the plays that I thought would be ending up on the most were like kind of Walker Kessler, given the low ownership, and also Jared Allen just as the day started. Now we do have Wemby and Giannis kind of coming in lower owned than I thought, even Chet as well, kind of coming in lower owned than I expected. But really, that's kind of the nature of the center position tonight on both slates. DraftKings, the highest owned player is J-Val at 21%. FanDuel, the highest owned player is Kelly Olynyk at 34%. Again, that's because that after that, it's pretty much spread out. So, and Kelly Olynyk power forward eligible as well. Definitely a fascinating slate. I would be very curious to hear you rank your 3 favorite center plays because I think it'll be different than mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jared Allen, number one. I really like him here. Um, I mean, I'm not going to include Anthony Davis in this group
Yeah.
because he's kind of an outlier. It's tricky, man. It really is. I'm going to go Jared Allen, then give me. Ugh. This is crazy.
Right.
I guess I'm going to go Allen. I'll go Olynyk just because I do like that power forward
Yeah.
eligibility. And then I'll go Wemby. I just think he's a little bit underowned. I like his upside against Vooch here. Vooch tends to struggle against bigger centers.
Yeah, so I think we would both agree with Allen. Just pricing wise, it does make sense. Like the power forward eligibility there on FanDuel, and then for me, yeah, Walker Kessler I like, and then I do like Chet Holmgren, just very cheap still on DraftKings specifically. FanDuel, I think we would both just want to get to Kelly Olynyk, just with the pricing discount.
I like it.
Yeah, and then so it is funny, like. All the Spurs players like Zach Collins completely off the board today, as is Keldon Johnson. Seems like in Wemby, who is now priced up, at least on FanDuel, he's difficult to get to. Are you just not getting to him? And then also, I kind of like your thoughts on Vucevic in that same game.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get to Wemby. I think Vooch is okay. Like I said, he tends to struggle against bigger centers. Wemby, I don't know. He's obviously bigger, but he's still kind of settling into his role, especially on
Mm-hmm.
defense. So I don't know that you need to shy away from that. Again, still no Zach LaVine. So that's just going to continue to boost the usage for someone like Vooch. But yeah, man, it is kind of tough to get to these guys just because we are prioritizing guys from these games where we have injuries. If Paul George is out, it's going to be even tougher because we're going to want to get to Kawhi, Harden, etc. But yeah, I guess one guy I didn't bring up is Zubats here. I mean, if
Yeah.
George is out, then I think he makes sense. Chet's been good on defense, but it's weird. It's like more like statistically good on defense. Like he's getting a lot of blocks. It's kind of like Claxton with the Nets. Like he does a lot when you look at the stat sheet,
Mm-hmm.
and he makes these huge plays that make him look awesome. But it's still a matchup that I think Zubac could do pretty well in if he's going to get extra usage here. So yeah, I think both centers in that game are fine, but I'm with you. I think it is tough to get to much from San Antonio. Again, with Wemby back, that's going to cut into the usage of everyone else. So, yeah.
Just talking about like the general roster construction today, because to me, it feels like when I kind of like to go through my builds, especially hand builds, I like just go with the value or top plays on the slate. To me, it feels like we're really trying to start out with really the guard position mostly, and then really trying to figure out from there maybe some correlated plays either at the center or forward spot. Is that kind of how you're seeing tonight's slate?
Yeah, I mean, I always start with the plays I like the best. Point per dollar tonight. That's going to be guards. Porter, probably Merrill, Sexton. They're kind of unavoidable. Jaw's probably my favorite pay up, so I'm going to get to a lot of him. So yeah, I usually start with what I like the most, and then try to build around that. But yeah, I mean, tonight we honestly have good options in every
Mhm.
price range at almost every position.
So we got Courtney kind of asking which plays would be your favorite in the mid range for FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ingram. I like Sexton's kind of mid range. He's one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite plays on
Yep.
the board. Fontecchio's 4,800. But yeah, those Pelicans with Zion out, that is a nice boost for them. I really would love Kawhi and Harden. If George is out, we're not going to have that news quite
Yeah.
yet. But I guess as things stand, I mean, mid range, if we're saying like 7K, 6K, it's definitely Sexton. Love Levert, even with Maryland, he's awesome. So probably those two, and then the Pelicans, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it just depends on your definition of mid range.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going a little bit lower, you got the Utah value there as well,
Mhm.
Dunn, Olynyk as well, so that's not bad.
I dig it.
And then, so yeah, we got confirmation on Sam Merrill playing. Let's go ahead and kind of get into the sample kind of first like build for tonight. Again, it's gonna be difficult. I think we decided on 2 plays, or really maybe 2 plays that we want to be on. If I don't want to put words into your mouth, but Craig Porter we feel pretty good about, and Jared Allen we feel pretty good about, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
And
I
then
will say this: I don't know that Allen is going to be as popular as maybe he should be, but
yeah.
I think for this build we could go ahead and use him.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to. It's just when I was looking at the centers, I felt like he was the one play
No, I
that I thought,
agree, and
okay,
like honestly, he's a great play at the ownership. Like I'm baffled that he's sub 10%
yeah,
right now. So
didn't
I'm
really
with
get a
you.
pricing bump either.
Nope.
But yeah, so where do you want to go from there? I know you mentioned you wanted to get to Ja. Is that kind of your must play on the slate?
Yeah, Ja is so. Let's fit him in there, and then I think there's a couple pieces of chalk we probably have to eat. I think
Yeah.
if Merrill's in, he's kind of unavoidable at 4,500, and then Levert is what? Let me see the DK price on Levert here.
So I had that problem last night. Is that I started with Levert in my builds, and I kept having to pivot off of him. Luckily, it wouldn't have made a difference. Like I still cashed, but it wasn't a lot. Like I wouldn't have been better in GPPs anyway. So thankfully, but yeah, it's he's at a weird price point where it is tough to get to.
Yeah,
But at the same time, you really don't have any other great small forward plays that you want to get to. Personally, I would rather get to Ingram, but
yeah.
that's up to you.
No, that's fair. I think you're fine to get to Ingram, or if we're talking at a guard spot, I think Sexton's a logical pivot as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to go Ingram, I think we're going to be up against pricing now with Ja
Yeah.
already in there. But yeah, go Ingram and see what we can fit with that.
We got 5.3 on average left over, so we can still fit in some decent plays there, especially with the Utah value potentially there. One player that we didn't mention that was pulling in some ownership, I was surprised by Luca for the Jazz, the power forward. Do we know what's going on? I was surprised at that ownership. He's at 14% projected on DraftKings, 8% on FanDuel. Is that just people trying to get exposure to that game? I don't get what's going on there.
I think it's because he's cheap, but
Yeah.
he has not been good. I would rather get to Taylor Hendricks for just 600
Yeah.
more if we have to use one of those forward spots for a Jazz player. Semantic has had one good game, and we've seen this situation a lot where this whole team is out. Hendricks actually looks like a good player. I think
Yeah.
there was hope for Semantic coming in, but I just haven't seen it yet. And like I'm from the school of thought where if I haven't seen it, I don't want to chase it. So I'd rather go to Hendricks if we have to punt
Yeah.
at forward. And
I
yeah,
was just kind of wondering there. It wasn't
yeah,
saying
I'm
we need to
surprised
play.
with the. I think it's a price thing more than anything. He's just really cheap.
Okay. Fair. Yeah, I kind of wanted to fit in a cheap guard play, but we already
Right?
have
Yeah,
Merle.
Dunn's priced up, which is weird.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is where it's tough. We already mentioned that the forwards kind of suck, and that's kind of why I want to get to like Brandon Ingram, honestly.
yeah, no, you're fine to keep Ingram. So what do we left point per dollar? I guess is the question.
5.3, which is typically manageable on a slate. The issue is I'm looking at the DK value at least. It's Craig Porter and then a big jump. And then like the next lowest priced player is going to be Okachai for Utah. Low owned. We already have enough low owned plays. We don't exactly need to play him. At the same
Yeah,
time, he might be the play that we go with to open up the rest of the build because after that, Kamara for then we can't play Kamara. I messed that up again. Let's go DK main.
oh, you're good.
Crazy.
Maybe Vince Williams, who I'm not
Yeah.
crazy about, or Branham
Yeah.
Marshall. Najee
No,
Marshall's not
Najee Marshall.
bad
Yeah.
at the price. Like I can't say I trust him, but 4,100 is
We'll go him. He's kind
yeah,
of
kind of
chalk.
appealing with Zion. Yeah, and he shouldn't kill you as chalk since he is pretty popular.
Oh man, yesterday I forget who the other play was, but I did. Who was the chalk disappointment? It wasn't Herb Jones. Who was the other play? It was Hartenstein. I played him, and I forget
Yeah,
who the other play was right by him. The other play did go off, and that was my mistake. I was
Jalen
kind of mad.
Smith, or is it
Huh?
Jalen Smith from Houston?
No. Oh yeah,
Jabari
Jabari.
Smith.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it was. Yep. I just
Yeah,
messed that up.
I did the same thing. I had tons of
Oh
Hartenstein
jeez.
and not much Jabari, but
I was mad because I should have just made another build with Porter. That was it. But yeah, we have a decent amount of salary left over. 5.9 now. Not great. Vince Williams, probably just got to plug him in there, honestly. Forward spot.
Yeah, Strus and Levert are both more, right? I would say
Yeah.
one of them over him.
Yeah.
But yeah,
We're probably able to get to one of them if we play him. Let me see.
Of the two, I definitely prefer Levert, but yeah.
Same. 6.6. Levert. Yeah, we can get to Levert then.
Boom. Perfect.
I feel pretty good about that. Nice. God, I don't want to say Marshall and Williams are bad chalk because I do think they hit value. It's just not chalk I'm excited to get to.
Agreed. Totally agreed. So yeah, it's like if you're playing Jaw and Ingram, it gets a little dicey. I mean, you could go down from Ingram to maybe Strus or put Levert in that spot and see what's there. Or if you go down from Jaw to one of these other value guards, I think you're in decent shape. But this is a good build. I do like where we're landing.
I was kind of thinking going down from Allen to like maybe a Linnick or Kessler or heck.
Yeah. It's just how much savings are we getting?
Yeah.
I mean, Kessler's 500 or almost 1,000 cheaper. Then
Yeah.
That's a pretty sharp play. I don't mind that.
But yeah, not a terrible build as is, but yeah, there's little pivots people could make out there.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and kind of get into our final thoughts for tonight. Do want to mention our kind of Christmas schedule. I don't know if we've exactly figured it out just yet. That's going to be a little bit different. We'll see, guys. We're going to be on the holidays as well, so we'll try to get some coverage out to you. But just know it could be at different times than it typically is. So yeah, get into the final thoughts. Just kind of looking at ownership again. Craig Porter, chalk, Sam Merle, Sexton, Marshall, Ingram. It is an interesting slate. We got two very chalky plays, and then it's kind of spread out. Same thing for FanDuel. Except for we're getting a little bit more high-owned plays. DeMar, chalk, Sexton, Dunn, Porter.
Yeah, I will say this. I think the biggest takeaway, or as far as last words goes, is just keep an eye on the news. Not only who's out, but also the starting lineups. We could see some weird things with the Pels or something like that. Wouldn't be surprising. But yeah, if Paul George is out, you're going to want to get to some of these other Clippers. Again, Norm Powell off the bench is going to look good. Amir Coffey's price is up. He's a guy I never want to play, but he's actually been good when he's been starting lately. Better than Terrence Mann, who I've been playing every slate and losing money on. So yeah, I don't think Coffey's insane if we get George out, but that's a major situation to keep an eye on. And then on FanDuel only, this Lakers situation. If AD's in, he's awesome. There's no LeBron. If AD's out, make sure you have a plan B before 8 o'clock Eastern when those other games lock, because it is an island game, which DK kindly cut off. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if we had the 10 o'clock game for pivots, but we don't. So you have to make that plan before those 8 o'clock games lock if we don't get the AD news. And yeah, he's a guy who usually we don't get the news till a half hour before that game locks. So I don't know. I'm hoping we hear soon. We probably won't. So just make sure you have plan B.
I feel like we would have gotten that news. They've been actually kind of good about, like with LeBron today, they've been pretty good about when one of those game time decisions. And
yeah, it is a back-to-back. That's the one thing that's like true. Maybe they have been better this year, though, I will say.
Yeah, they don't want to get in trouble with the NBA. That's why they're the in-season champs, of course. You know.
Oh yeah, raise the banner.
I love that. All right, guys, that is going to be all for today's video. Again, thank you guys for being here. We'll keep you guys updated on the Christmas content on Twitter. You know, we'll put something out there, whether it's going to be a live stream or just a recorded video that we put out. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Thank you guys for being here.
Take care, everyone.